Yo, what is actually going on with NELK right now? Because bro, SteveWillDoIt just went on camera and basically said Kyle Forgeard robbed him. Not in a joking way, not in a we're beefing for content way, like genuinely, dead serious, this man is pissed off. And Kyle fired back with receipts, numbers, bank statements, the whole thing. And now the internet is absolutely losing its mind, trying to figure out who is actually lying. So today we are breaking down everything. The allegations, the responses, the missing millions, all of it. Because trust me, this story goes way deeper than you think. Alright, so to understand why this beef is hitting different, you have to understand where Steve came from. Because this man was literally a nobody on Instagram, posting videos of himself drinking insane amounts of alcohol before Kyle even knew he existed. No clout, no following, nothing. Kyle finds him with under 1,000 followers, posts him on his story saying this guy is not human, and basically put Steve on the map overnight. And from there, it just snowballed. Kyle starts sending him merch, paying him $500 a video, eventually flies him out to LA, and the chemistry was just there immediately. Steve fits perfectly into the NELK world. The energy, the chaos, the characters. He becomes one of the most popular guys on the channel almost instantly. Fans loved him. Like genuinely, Steve was appointment viewing. So you have to understand, when Steve joined NELK, he was grateful. He was happy to be there. And that is important because that is exactly where the problem started. Because when you are happy just to be in the room, you are not negotiating properly. You are not reading contracts carefully. You are just saying yes to everything because you cannot believe this is your life right now. And that is exactly what happened. Fast forward a few years and Steve is now massive. Like legitimately one of the biggest personalities on the internet, and he starts realizing that his bag does not match his impact, and that is where the resentment starts building. Now Steve has spoken about this publicly, and he has a list of grievances. First up, the Metacard NFT situation. NELK launched their full send Metacard project in January 2022, and bro, they sold 10,000 cards in literally 10 minutes. 10 minutes. That is $23 million gone in the time it takes to watch an episode of a sitcom. Steve was out there promoting this thing hard, putting his name behind it, telling his audience to buy in. And according to Steve, he was supposed to have equity in the project, a percentage. He never saw a dollar of it. Then there is the ownership side of things. Steve says he was given 15% of NELK for free, and then invested $500,000 for an additional 5%. That is a 20% stake in a company that at this point is doing tens of millions in revenue between merchandise, Happy Dad, brand deals, the whole empire. And Steve is saying he got pushed out of all of it. And then the merch situation, which honestly surprised me. NELK did a $12 million merch drop. Steve's cut was $400,000. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a lot of money, but when you actually think about it, Steve's merch was a massive driver of those sales. 75% of his income from NELK during that period came from his own merchandise performing. So he is sitting there watching $12 million come through the door and taking home less than 4% of it. And Bradley Martin, of all people, co-signed Steve's frustrations, saying his own name and likeness were used on merch, and he did not see a single dollar. When Bradley Martin is jumping in agreeing with you, that gives your argument some serious weight. Okay, so here's where it gets interesting, because Kyle does not just sit there and take it. He comes out swinging with actual numbers. And bro, the numbers are wild. Kyle pulls out a year-by-year breakdown of personal cash earnings from 2019 to 2023. And according to Kyle, Steve earned just over $12 million from NELK during that stretch. Kyle himself earned just under $3.5 million. So Steve made nearly 4 times more than Kyle did during the same period running the company.
Talk about how much money Steve earned from NELK. So I'm going to pop up something here. It's a year-by-year breakdown of personal cash earnings for me and Steve. So you can see here from 2019 to 2023 how much I made and how much Steve made each year. Over that stretch, personally, I earned just under $3.5 million. Over that same stretch, Steve earned just over $12 million in cash. And these payments were just from NELK. Steve also did outside third-party brand deals independently from NELK. In our deal, there was a standard 15% management fee for NELK on these outside deals, but I chose not to enforce that percentage on several major deals. On those deals, Steve kept the full 100% amount. So the reason I earned less than Steve during that time is pretty simple. The money had to stay in NELK so we could keep shooting videos. Shooting these videos was not cheap. You have the production, the filmers, the editors, the travel. All that required real capital. When we were traveling through Europe with 15 people, so we could shoot, edit, and upload a video every single week, the Airbnbs, the production, the travel, that stuff was not cheap. If the money didn't stay in the company, then these videos would not get made. So as the owner, it was my job and my priority to keep the money in the company and pay the people that made the content possible over taking more money personally.
Now, Kyle's explanation for why he earned less is that the money had to stay in the business. They were traveling with 15 people across Europe, shooting videos every single week. Production costs, flights, Airbnbs, editors, filmers, all of that was coming out of the company. Kyle is saying, as the owner, it was his job to keep the money in the company, rather than taking it personally. On the ownership situation, Kyle says he gave Steve 10% equity in NELK, and Steve also chose to invest that $500,000 for an additional 5%. But here's the key part. Kyle says Steve eventually decided he did not want the 15% management fee that NELK was taking on his outside brand deals. So they made a deal. Steve gets full independence and no more management fee. In exchange, he gives back his equity in NELK. Both of them signed it. Kyle even returned the $500,000 investment with $50,000 interest on top. And on Happy Dad specifically, Kyle confirms Steve was given 15% of Happy Dad when the company launched and still holds that stake today. So on paper, Kyle's response actually looks pretty clean. Like, the receipts are there, the contracts are there, both parties signed everything. But here's the thing, and this is what people keep glossing over. Kyle's response handles the NELK earnings really well, but it barely touches the Metacard money, and that is the one that matters most. $23 million raised in 10 minutes, an additional $3 to $5 million in secondary market royalties on top of that. Blockchain records showing the funds were pulled from the minting wallet in large chunks within weeks of the launch, and almost nothing delivered to the 10,000 people who bought in. No gyms, no casinos, no restaurants, no metaverse utility, no full send lounges in Vegas, Miami, New York, nothing. The cards that people were paying up to $10,000 for on secondary markets are now worth $50. $50! And Steve was out there publicly vouching for this thing, inviting Metacard holders to his house, taking them to UFC events, genuinely trying to make the community feel the love, while the money seemingly just disappeared.
It will be interesting to see what Steve says to this, because it seems like NELK treated him pretty well, but maybe there's some things that have been left out. That 15% in Happy Dad is huge, huge money, and I mean, he deserves it. He helped build the business, but there may be things that we don't know yet. Now, in the video, Kyle said that he's still friends with him, but obviously it's never going to be the same. As someone who watched them blow up on YouTube, it stinks to see two guys who were seemingly friends kind of fall off and kind of go their separate ways. As Ludwig said, y'all got to get offline, crack a few Coronas, and hang out and shoot the shit like the old days, bro. This has gone too far. Who knows if that ever happens? But yeah, massive news for the unemployed.
And now there are two active class action lawsuits, one seeking $2,300 back for every single one of those 10,000 holders, the other going even harder on consumer fraud and false advertisement charges, citing specific podcast quotes where Kyle made explicit promises about what these cards would deliver. And then they tried to fix it with beef jerky. Bro, beef jerky. After raising $23 million from your most loyal fans, your solution is a beef jerky brand. And not even that, because as of right now, the whole thing is offline and being rebranded. But here's the part that is actually crazy. To participate in the beef jerky equity offer, or to get a refund of your original mint price, you had to sign away your right to sue NELK forever. You could not use a foreign bank account. You had to refer 3 new buyers. And the phantom shares they were offering come with a 10-year expiry, meaning if the company does not get acquired or go public within 10 years, you could walk away with absolutely nothing, even if the business is thriving. The lawsuit straight up calls this a facade, designed to strip Metacard holders of their legal rights. And honestly, it is hard to argue with that framing. So where does this leave us? Honestly, man, Kyle handled the NELK earnings argument well. The receipts are there. Steve signed contracts. Steve made a lot of money. That part of the argument, Kyle wins on paper. But the Metacard situation is a completely different story. $23 million, almost zero delivered, 2 lawsuits, and a response from Kyle that barely addresses it. That is the part that nobody has a clean answer for. And Jesse, the original NELK guy, comes out talking about chapters and growth and moving on, which is wholesome and whatever, but bro, people lost real money here. This is not just internet drama. This is fans who genuinely trusted these guys and got burned. The court is going to decide how this ends, but one thing is certain, the NELK empire is not what it used to be. And Steve putting all of this on camera has made sure the whole world is watching. Drop a comment below. Who do you think is telling the truth here? Because this one is far from over. Anyway, this concludes today's video. Be sure to subscribe to LoafTube for future celebrity videos, and turn on that post notification bell so you don't miss out on any future uploads. Until then, see you in the next one.